Hey guys, I thought I'd go ahead and talk to you guys a little bit about the healing mage tower. This is for all healing specs except for Disc Priest, which does a DPS spec. I did it on a Holy Paladin, as you can see. I think Holy Paladin has a really great toolkit for it, but obviously all of the specs can do it. I think Holy Paladin and Mistweaver Monk are both really well set up to do it if you're just looking for someone to do it very easily. Let's go ahead and talk about what I did to do it. Let's see here. Okay, there we go. So, I'm going to talk a little bit about my gearing strategy, but note that not everything is required. I'll talk about what I think is very important versus what's just beneficial. And let's go ahead and say holy sockets. This is very easy to achieve, to be completely honest. I didn't spend a lot of time farming a specific set for this. I did a Siege of Orgrimmar run last week, and I got almost the entire socketed set. And then I was missing, I think, shoes and an int shield. And I just realized I still don't have an int shield that's got a strength bonus on it. But point being, I was missing a few pieces. I went back in today, got most of them. About half of it's Warforged, other stuff's just normal. So you can just go into Siege of Orgrimmar, get tons of socketed gear from just one run of Siege of Orgrimmar. It's a long raid, but obviously very easy at level 60. Highly recommend it. There's a few things that you might not have nearly as readily available. The Mist of Pandaria Legendary Cloak, if you have one of those, it has main stat and a socket on it. If you have any Mist of Pandaria Legendary Cloak, even if you say we're only a Ret Prop Paladin like me, so you don't have the Holy one, you can actually go to Tavern in the Mists in Mist of Pandaria. There is a vendor inside the inn where the Black Prince used to hang out, and you can just buy the other cloaks and upgrade them. So that's what I did. I just went and bought the Holy Cloak that I didn't already have. And then some Legion legendaries I'm running, since I played in Legion, I can equip 2. So I have Prydaz, because it's one of the few necklaces you can get with a socket. There are a few necks in the game with 2 or even 3 sockets. There's one neck in the game with 3 sockets. It comes from archaeology. But they're pretty hard to get. I vendored mine years ago, unfortunately, but it is what it is. So Prydaz was the way to go. And then the legendary belt, which I believe is mined on equip. I think this is crafted, not 100% sure about it, but it does have 3 sockets in it, so that's another great thing. Obviously, the legendary effects on these don't actually impact your run. They're disabled in the tower, but they are still, you're doing this in order to get the sockets to put in int gems, not for anything else. Because there's a huge demand right now for the Mage Tower. They're very easy to get your hands on, though, if you or a friend has an alchemist and a jewel crafter, because you can prospect ghost iron ore. You might get some rubies out of that, but you'll also get Pandarian garnets. You can transmute that with 1 garnet and 1 golden lotus. You will get a primordial ruby out of it every time. And if you have transmute spec, you might proc extra primordial rubies. So don't pay crazy auction house prices. Just use jewel crafting and alchemy to get all the gems you need, so it gets nice and cheap. All of that stuff that I've just mentioned is beneficial. It's not required. I did a few runs with just my my normal Mythic Plus gear, which is very heavy DPS and versatility stacked, and I really didn't notice much of a difference at all as far as how much damage I was doing, how quick things were dying, or how much damage I took. So whatever gear you're wearing should be fine. That said, trinkets are a bit of a different situation. So let's talk about my trinkets, because both are important. So this one's the easiest one to talk about. The Ravaged Seed Pod is dropped by the first boss in Emerald Nightmare. You just go in, you kill the little slimes in the room with the dragon, and then kill the dragon. And then you can walk out and change the difficulty. You can kill her on all 4 raid difficulties, looking for a raid through Mythic. So you have 4 chances at this per week. So it's almost guaranteed you'll get at least one. The item level doesn't matter, because of course it's going to scale down to 50, so just get one. If you get one and you're already there anyways, you might as well kill it on the other difficulties, though, because if it procs with a socket or leech, then that's even better if you can manage it. The other thing you want to do, in my opinion, this is a huge benefit in general in all of the Mage Towers, but especially in the healing one. It's also a little bit of a liability in the healing one, and we'll talk about that while we're running through. But this Ghost Iron Dragonling, it's made by engineers, but it can be used by anyone. So it's very easy to make. This is my engineer, so we can even look at it. Ghost Iron Dragonling. So this is the iron bolts and the high explosive gunpowder are simply ghost iron. All you need is ghost iron bars for that. then some cheap cloth, and you'll make this level 39 Ghost Iron Dragonling. If you add an optional reagent and actually use one of these Relics of the Past, 5, it will scale up to 54, meaning it will be the maximum item level it can be for Mage Tower, because it will then scale down to 50 once you start the challenge. Highly recommend. That's what I did. That's why mine's item level 54. And then, as you can see, it crafts with 3 empty sockets. So then, those are special sockets called cogwheels, or they take cogwheels, and they 2 Ghost Iron bars per gear that goes into them, and these are just secondary stats. So mastery, parry, haste, etc. And because of the way that Blizzard kind of combined stats when they removed certain secondary stats like hit rating, armor pen, expertise, etc., now you can actually double up. So you can see mine actually has 2 haste gems. That's a precise and a quick. So you can actually double up on secondary stats when you couldn't back in the day. So it's really nice. I highly recommend you track down an engineering friend and have them make one of these for you, because it is a huge deal. You probably can't see this very well on the screen, but in the last phase of my Mage Tower, the Ghost Iron Dragonling, oh, I should also say it's not just the secondary stacks, it also says equip your attacks. Have a chance to summon a Ghost Iron Dragonling to fight with you for 20 seconds. That Dragonling did almost 20% of my damage in that last phase of the fight. So this is a huge deal. I'll talk more about why it's a huge deal, as well as some things to be aware of for it while you're running through your Mage Tower once we actually get into the run. So let's go ahead and start looking at the run itself. Alright, so the Healing Challenge is a multi-stage encounter in which you will first fight some waves of enemies, then have to climb up through a tower of obstacles, and then eventually have a boss fight at the top of the tower. You zone in with 3 buddies, Callie, Granny Marl, and Commander Jared Shadowsong. Jared is your tank, the others are your DPS, and you are, of course, the healer. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Paladin specific stuff that I do, but I'll talk about like what that's supposed to be doing for me as far as CC usage and such, so that hopefully you can figure out what your healing class has that mimics that purpose, and you can consider what you're going to use instead. When you first zone in, every single time it's going to wipe your aura, so if you have an aura or similar buffs, make sure to put that up. And you're also going to want to put your beacon on Jared Shadowsong, since, as mentioned, he is your tank. If you're running Beacon of Faith, just put the other one on probably Granny Marl. She's probably the most squishy of the DPS. That said, I don't really feel like Beacon of Faith was useful here. I was running Glimmer for the extra damage and healing that could bring. Really, no one other than yourself, maybe, and Jared will be taking particularly big damage that you can't avoid in other better ways. Running Light's Hammer for extra damage, Awakening for extra wings, and we'll go ahead and get started and actually talk about the mechanics themselves. So I'm going to be doing my initial buffs, put up that beacon, and now I'm just building Holy Power while all of our mobs come in that we're going to be fighting and RP's happening. I'm building Holy Power and getting ready to go. Now, this encounter is just all about fighting these waves of adds. We're going to start with 1 archer. It's just this first guy every time. Now, he'll come out to about this point, and then he just starts shooting. So I put down a Consecrate, keep my Holy Power up, keep Beacon, or keep Glimmer buffs out. Now, you don't need to go crazy on this guy. You don't want to pop big cooldowns. If you have a 1 minute cooldown or less, go ahead and use it though, because you're going to have plenty of time to get that back. So I pop Light's Hammer and my Trinket, because both of those are 1 minute cooldowns. And this archer is just going to randomly shoot people. Here is the one mechanic to worry about the archer, Mana Sting. It's going to target you. You'll have this big blue triangle on your head and a big blue arrow somewhere on the ground. You do not want to get hit by this. If you do, you'll get a magic debuff that will sap your mana very quickly. And it isn't necessarily a wipe if you've got mana potions, but it's pretty rough to recover from. And it's very easy to deal with this mechanic. All you do is you make sure that that arrow intersects one of your NPCs. This will usually be Jared, but it can be any NPC. It won't kill your other dudes either. It's not like one hit's going to kill anyone. You just want to make sure it doesn't suck your mana. When it teleports away to do the Mana Sting, I don't recommend chasing after it. It gets very frustrating. Instead, since it's usually low, I'll instead go to where the next ones are going to spawn and just get started and toss some ranged stuff at whatever's still alive out there. So the next stage has started. This introduces our Mage mechanic. So the Mage is your top priority whenever one is in the pull. It's just going to spam Arcane Blitz. Every time it casts Arcane Blitz, it gains a magic buff like that. You can see it right there on the nameplate. And that the more stacks of that it has, the more damage Arcane Blitz does. So if that stack gets up too high, it can absolutely one-shot someone. You want to deal with this by just killing it quickly. There are other things you can do. If you're a shaman, you can use Wind Shear to kick it. You can use fears, stuns, things of that nature in order to stop it. That said, because I feel that all of the CC and damage cooldowns and such are more worthwhile to spend elsewhere, I don't really put anything into this. They are relatively squishy, all of these mobs are, and so I would say just focus it down and don't worry too much about CCing it. The best thing you can do is just get it dead before the damage stacks up too high. Let's see here. That said, I do end up using Arcane Torrent here in order to just remove one stack with that offensive purge. I think I do anyways. Either way, it just lowers the amount of damage that's going out. It's not something that's absolutely necessary. While you're fighting this, you'll get a Mana Sting. Remember, that's the blue arrow. So rather than worrying about this, I'm not going to bother trying to stop it per se. I just make sure that that arrow goes through Jared's Shadow Song or any of my other NPCs. And then once it goes out, I'm going to immediately cleanse the person who got hit by it. Ooh, he got a little bit low. That's pretty scary right there. I'm surprised I didn't lay on hands, but once the mage is dead, there's very little risk in this pull anyways. So it's not that surprising that I didn't lay on hands because I'm just going to let them continue to wail on that Arbalest while I just top everyone off. This is very much about controlling, and the whole encounter is about controlling what the encounter and holding things for when you need them, not going crazy, just popping all your buttons. Your buttons absolutely have a purpose. You need to hold them for that purpose and not freak out and go try and speed through this. This is more about control than speed. I can see it's about to Mana Sting again, so it's going to teleport. There we go. And as you can see, I have no NPC here, and because I was getting in position for the next ones that spawn. So in a moment, I'm going to back up to make sure it goes through an NPC. Oh, I guess Callie had popped up over there, so I'm going to cleanse her because she took it. And then the next wave starts as soon as that one dies. Again, we have a mage who is again our top priority to kill. And this introduces the soldier mechanic. The soldier has two abilities. The first thing it will do is Knife Dance, which is beginning now. And the second thing will be a Fixate. The Knife Dance is something you absolutely want to stop. It is going to cast up. In other words, the bar is going to fill going to the right. And then it is going to channel down, meaning the bar is going to drain moving to the left. You want to make sure to interrupt this as soon as it begins to drain going to the left. So you want it to finish the cast up and interrupt it as soon as it begins to cast down. The reason is if you interrupt it too early and it's casting up, you didn't technically fully interrupt it and it can just recast it again. Well, if you interrupt it after it channels down, it's now on cooldown and it has to move to its next ability. So there are a lot of different ways you can do this. You can do it with a stun, a fear, an in-cap, things like that. As a paladin, I highly recommend using Turn Evil for this. It will not only interrupt it, but it also is on a short cooldown, relatively short cast time, about 1.3 seconds. And it will also essentially push the mob away by fearing it far away from you, which is good for the mechanic that comes after. So so I wait until Knife Dance has about 1 second left on its cast there, and then I'll begin casting Turn Evil at it. So there we go, Turn Evil, and now it's being feared away, and we can safely just finish getting this mage down, and I keep everyone topped off. Once it's down, I just top everyone off. Again, I don't want to chase the soldier, because the next mechanic, as soon as I came out of the fear, is the Fixate. It will virtually always target you at this point. When there's two up, it can fixate someone else, but this one has always targeted me. I'm not really going to bother running. I've got plenty of space and time to just keep myself topped off. They do more damage when they're fixated on you, so you don't want to just completely ignore it. However, usually if you're focusing on healing yourself, you often don't need to blow any cooldowns or anything, so they're probably best left for something else. That said, don't be afraid to do a defensive or a healing pod if you need to. You'll be able to get most of your cooldowns back before you need them again. As long as you don't need them for the next two waves, you can pop anything you want. It's going to Knife Dance again. Given how low it is, I could have just let it go. However, I don't really want to have to deal with all that AoE damage. Even if it only got part of a knife dance out, that's still a fair amount of AoE damage before going into what I think is the hardest wave. So I am probably going to, yep, I turned evil. All that's going to do is interrupt it, and then it immediately breaks and fixates me, but then we kill it. So this next wave is, in my opinion, the hardest. We've got our mage, which, remember, priority 1, and our 2 soldiers. So this means that we have 2 knife dances and 2 fixates to worry about. They will do it on the exact same time, which is helpful. So again, we're bursting down the mage. This is when I would pop some cooldowns. You don't necessarily want to pop all of them. What I would recommend, I'm not sure if it doesn't look like it's, I think I end up popping like my trinket and stuff here. But what I would recommend doing is pop your wings here and save your trinket and your hammer for the next phase. You can also, if you wish to, put a lust, slash drums, obviously, or a potion into one or the other. Basically, split your cooldowns pretty evenly between this and the next phase. And I recommend having the one right now be wings so that you don't have to wait too much between waves to wait for your wings to come back. So that's why I recommend wings here. We have, I'm bursting down the mage, but you can see this knife dance is casting up, and I really want to stop that because it's 2 of them, and that will absolutely destroy my team. So this is why we have blinding light in our spec. We're going to hit it, stops both of those from casting, and then I can get everyone back up. And since I've got wings up, it should be pretty easy to top everyone off pretty quickly. They are going to come out of the blinding light, immediately doing their next ability, which is fixate. They've both fixated on me. This often happens, in which case I pop Divine Protection, but it doesn't always happen. Sometimes they focus someone else, and in that case I will usually bop that person just so that they don't accidentally get just completely chunked when I'm not realizing what's happening. So you shouldn't really need any other defensives, so go ahead and use whatever defensives you want to survive this if you get the double fixate. So once they've done fixated, they're not a big deal. The next thing they're going to do is another knife dance. You'll see now we've got one nearly full and one nearly dead. The one that's going to nearly die is not going to get its full knife dance off. So that one's not nearly as much of a threat as this one that is going to get its full knife dance off. So when they start casting, I switch to the high health one. I fear him to interrupt it, kill the one that's still knife dancing, and then once he's dead, I can very quickly top everyone off. And since it's only one fixating me, this isn't nearly as much of a risk. And we finish getting this guy killed. Then we will go into the last wave of this stage. We have a mage, so again, priority 1. Then we have a soldier and an arbalest, which is that mana sting, the mana sting hunter we've seen before. So we will pop the trinket and the light's hammer. When this one knife danced, I could have feared it, but I didn't really feel like it. And when I had Hodge available, and I also don't have blinding light available, so I just Hodged it to stop that AoE damage. Keep taking out the mage. When the mana sting comes, I just make sure that it's going through someone else. Very easy since Jared is right here. I popped Lay on Hands on Callie just for safety's sake. Again, there are lots of pause points in this challenge that if you want to wait for cooldowns, you will have the opportunity to do it. So particularly right here, we're just before what you might consider a rest point. So if you want to pop cooldowns here, go right ahead. You're going to be able to get everything back if you want it. I'm fixated again, but I'm not concerned because I've got wings up and it's only the one. So I'm just going to heal through it. We're going to keep bursting down this the soldier. Said cleanse Commander Jared because he totally took my mana sting because he's a good tank, stands in all my mechanics for me. And we're just going to keep everyone alive and cleansed while we finish off this last mob. And that is stage 1. So we can now wait. We have all the time in the world now. If you used drums and you want to wait 10 minutes for the debuff to wear off, you can do that. There is nothing keeping you from just chilling here as long as you want. You're not in combat, so you can change your spec with tomes. You can change your gear. Tomes, you can actually buy low-level ones because the game technically thinks you're level I think 45 or so. So you can buy cheaper tomes if you want to bring some in. And then we're going to eventually, once you've had all of your rest break, move on to the next phase. Now, the next phase will begin when we walk into this little room. So we don't want to walk in there until we're ready. So we're looking at our spec. The spec that I use is not necessary here. I was just playing around with different specs on all of my attempts. When I actually did this in my kill, if you will, I think every phase I believe was almost the same spec. I had Light's Hammer, I had Saved by the Light, I had Blinding Light, I had Unbreakable Spirit, I had Divine Purpose, I had Awakening, and I swapped so Glimmer of Light I had for everything except for the final phase. So I just would swap these 2 talents, but otherwise everything was Light's Hammer, Saved by the Light, Blinding Light, Unbreakable Spirit, Divine Purpose, and Awakening. So what I'm doing before going in here is, of course, once I've got my specs sorted and all my buffs up, make sure, by the way, that you move your beacon to yourself, because you're going to lose your teammates and you want yourself to be the beacon to benefit from Saved by the Light and all the extra holy power generation you'll get from healing yourself. And then we're just going to generate holy power by healing ourselves, because if we heal ourselves when we have our beacon, we get a holy power. You don't actually have to top up your little teammates here. I just do because I'm sitting around bored waiting for cooldowns. And then we're going to generate holy power before we go in, because the next part is actually, in my opinion, one of the hardest parts of this challenge. So we want to go in with full holy power, and if you're running Glimmer, you want to get a Glimmer off on yourself before you start this section. Looks like I didn't get around to doing that, but ideally you'd have a Glimmer on yourself as well, just for a little bit of extra preparation. So when this section starts, there's going to be these 6 eyes here. They're flickering eyes. All of our dudes are going to be kidnapped from us, and once we come out of this green stun bubble, we have to deal with these eyes while we're locked in this room. These eyes, if you get too close to them, they do massive amounts of damage, and when they die, they explode for massive amounts of damage, and that will hit you from far away. So there are a few strategies to do this. The tried and true safe way that most people should end up doing it is that they'll kill one while they're at full health, heal themselves back up. That will give them a safe place to stand, and then they use a ranged attack to kill another one, heal themselves up, ranged attacks to kill another one, heal themselves up. That is entirely valid. That is the way that you're supposed to do that. That said, one of the hardest things for me for this challenge was just adapting to that kind of slow, methodical way of doing it. I'm very much more of a pop everything and try to brute force my way through challenges. And I tried that here a lot, which ends up being a less controlled and much more volatile strategy. But basically it involves trying to kill everything as quickly as possible during Divine Shield. So so that's what I'll do here, but note that if you're having trouble with this, or if you're not a paladin, then you can do them one at a time, and that's entirely fine. You're technically on a 5-minute timer from this point right here. That said, you have plenty of time. You can chill. You don't have to rush too much. So what I do in order to try and kill them as quickly as possible, if you want to kind of do this same strategy, is I'm trying to get as many things in a ground-based AoE as possible. So I'm going to get a hammer here, my trinket, and a consecrate, wings to increase my damage at some point. Come on, wings, there we go. And divine shield. Wings? There we go. So you can see them all exploding, but it's not killing me only because I'm in my divine shield. If I weren't in my divine shield, I would be dead, dead, dead. So now that my divine shield's off, I need to heal myself up quickly. Especially because here's that liability that I'm talking about the Ghost Iron Dragonling. He can absolutely kill one of these himself. And so if he kills one when you're not expecting it and you're not ready for it, it can absolutely wipe you. So that's kind of where the risk is. But remember, right before this stage and right after the eyes stage, you can change your gear. So if you don't want to have to deal with that RNG, well, it's not quite RNG, but if you don't want to deal with that risk, you can always change to something that doesn't do this kind of uncontrollable damage situation. But he was part of my do as much damage as possible plan. So I can see him going off to finish that eye, so I'm just frantically healing myself as quick as I can. we've killed all the eyes. So this section is now done, and we move into the hallway. These unstable fel orbs are, if they get too close to you, they will put a pretty chunky dot on you, and they will also slow you, so you want to stay away from them. And you deactivate them by doing damage. So you can throw a Holy Shock at them, you can throw a Judgment at them, you can drop a Consecrate near them, and they will deactivate. Then you're just going to fight this Dominator guy. He's not a big deal. He will enrage his bats, so there we go, they all turn to red. If you are taking a big chunk of damage, there's two things that are really useful for Paladins to remember here. You can Shield of the Righteous, which you might be using as a finisher anyways, but some of us are very accustomed to fishing for awakening procs. So if you're doing that, you may consider weaving in a Shield of the Righteous because it's also a huge armor increase. And also Blinding Light is huge. As soon as those guys enrage, you can hit Blinding Light. Blinding Light is only, the Disorient is only broken on non-holy damage, and since Consecrate and everything's holy damage, they will actually stay disoriented for a very long time and still be able to be damaged. So you can buy yourself a lot of free time of just damaging the Dominator at that point in time. So in the meantime, we're just finishing him out. You might consider dropping another Consecrate even after he dies to keep those orbs from reactivating, and then we're going to go into the next section. Now in the next section, you can see some friendly NPCs here. We've got one here, we've got one here, and we've got one around the corner to the left, and then we've got this guy with the purple skull over his head running around. While you're opening this gate, target the guy with the purple skull so that you can very quickly cleanse him. It's a magic effect. You want to cleanse his fear as quickly as possible, because if he gets close to you while he's still feared, he will fear you too, and it really sucks. So that's your first priority as soon as the gate opens. Then you want to heal these three guys. They are very easy to heal. A few Light of the Martyrs will get them. A Holy Shock and a Wog will get them. Switch between the three and triage them because they might start off very low, and you want to make sure to keep any of them from dying. Because anything that dies from here on out, you have to fight later. So you want to avoid that. And you can do so just by switching to triage them so none of them die, then heal them to full before you pull this Arbalest. This is the same Arbalest type of mob as you fought in the first phase. So this is the one with the Mana Sting. You can use these NPCs to block the Mana Sting if you want, but I found just a Hodge and a Blinding Light always sufficient. Because even once you've healed them, these guys can still take damage and they can still die, and you don't want that to happen. So I just try to keep them from being at any sort of risk. I've dropped my Light's Hammer and my Trinket because I won't. So the next time I go into a room, I absolutely want Divine Shield, and it has 2 minutes left. So since I know I'm going to be waiting for at least 2 minutes, I'm popping anything that's less than a 2-minute cooldown, because not because this thing is a particular risk, but just because I'm going to be waiting for cooldowns anyway, so I might as well just go into this with as much as I can spare. So when it cast Mana Sting, I waited for Mana Sting to be nearly done, and then I hodged it for some free time on it. This one I'm not going to bother trying to interrupt because I know I'll kill it before it goes off. Alright, so now we're facing a hallway with just a bunch of these orbs. They aren't going to attack, but again, if they get close to you, they put on that big dot and slow. And they're pretty easy to avoid even without attacking them. But once we get to the top of that, we're going to be near our next challenging room. So this is where, if you choose to wait for cooldowns, do most of the waiting down here. Which is exactly what I do, because like I said, I want Divine Shield, so I need to wait about 1.5 minutes. A lot of the healing challenge is honestly waiting, and it kind of psychologically gets to you, especially if you're just stuck on like the last phase, because you end up spending so much time just trying to get back there because of the waiting. So now that I've got about 20 seconds left on Divine Shield, I'm opening the door, and we're going to head up here. Again, just drop Consecrates and such. Try not to do Light's Hammer or anything because you're going to want it for this room, presuming you do my strategy, my Zerg strat. So here we are in this room. So as soon as we open this gate, this Corruptor in the center is going to aggro. And you can see here some more of those flickering eyes. These are the explodey eyes. So we're going to open this up. I'm already preparing to drop Light's Hammer, throw it immediately after I go in the room. drop some more of my ground-based AoE, pop Divine Shield, pop Wings, kill all of the eyes as quick as I can in order to clear out the room. Whew, got a little bit low there, so I popped a healing potion just for safety's sake. But now I've got this whole room to work with. The Corruptor is a really simple mob to deal with. He does like a Mind Spike or something like that cast. But his main actual ability that might kill you is these eyes that he summons. Here in just a moment, green lines, there we go. So they all summon green lines that begin to rotate, and they do huge damage if you're standing in them actually. So you want to avoid them by moving out of them. But if you can imagine, those flickering eyes were still up, there would be very few safe places to stand. Some people will choose to maybe kill one eye, pull this Corruptor into that safe spot, kill the Corruptor, and then finish off the eyes when it's safe. I, as you can see, did the opposite way. I destroyed all the eyes quickly, and then once it was safe, I dealt with the Corruptor. Both are valid. It just kind of comes down to what's your toolkit best for. Divine Shield lends itself very well to just destroy all the eyes within that very short time period. If you don't have an immunity like that, then perhaps doing the more controlled kill might be more up your alley. But whenever he summons eyes, you just move out of them and keep killing him. And that's it. So that is the full stage here. And then we are going to go on to the last stage. You again have plenty of time to wait and chill, change your spec, redo your buffs, etc., etc. As you've seen, I did switch to Beacon of Faith. I think I'll switch to Awakening as well. Yep, I sure do. And then we will head back in. Once we go through this door, you can see me dicking around with my spec here. Let's see here. What rows actually matter as far as I'm concerned? Let's talk about it. Light's Hammer is big because you will have a phase in this next fight that you can't be in melee, but you need to do damage to a mob that's in melee. So you want Light's Hammer. Saved by the Light is great for a little bit of extra safety, especially if you end up running Beacon of Faith, because you can Saved by the Light multiple people that way. Judgment of Light isn't bad, but I think Saved by the Light is just the nature of how it works is a lot more likely to save lives, if you will. The level 30 talent, technically, if any of these were to matter, it would be Fist of Justice. You can apparently stun the last boss, however, he still does all of his mechanics, so I don't know if it actually matters. I didn't stun him at all, but I've heard he's stunnable, in which case Fist of Justice might be useful. I didn't feel like it would have been worth the GCD. Technically, all 3 of the 35 could be useful. You do have a lot of stuff to run out of, but it's at a very predictable time, so I really didn't think Cavalier would be worth it. Rule of Law, like this is actually a challenge that mastery can matter a lot. However, I don't have much mastery on my gear, so I didn't bother with Rule of Law, but it might be of interest to you. Unbreakable Spirit is obviously what I went with. Having better cooldowns on my defensives is just better for me, to be honest. I've seen a lot of people run Holy Avenger for the last section. I personally really like Divine Purpose. Holy Avenger psychologically makes me feel like, oh, if Holy Avenger's up, I have to be in melee the whole time or I waste it. And that doesn't work out very well for the fight pattern for the last boss, so I didn't bother with Holy Avenger. I just stuck with Divine Purpose. Seraphim, for me, suffers the same as Holy Avenger. I like just like free wogs every once in a while for Divine Purpose. I've seen great reasoning behind all 3 of the tier 45s. Personally, I like Awakening better, because Sanctified Wrath is somewhat similar to Seraphim and Holy Avenger. I feel like, oh, Wings is up, I gotta get in there. Avenging Crusader in particular, you get really punished if you can't be in melee for your wings, because a lot of that turns some of your melee stuff into heals, and you're not going to be able to melee much compared to usual. So I don't really love Avenging Crusader. Additionally, the heals from Avenging Crusader aren't controlled and they might heal you, which actually you don't necessarily want on this next fight. You do not want any heals that you can't control that might go on to you, which is why I like Awakening. It's just free wings to toss extra throughput, be it damage or healing wherever you need it. Glimmer of Light would be great, to be honest. That said, I just felt that everyone was a little bit rough, so I did go with Beacon of Faith. I think Glimmer of Light is entirely viable if you have otherwise the throughput you would like to have. Beacon of Virtue is one that I would not recommend because, again, you might accidentally beacon yourself with it, and there are times when you will not want to heal yourself. So I think that Beacon of Virtue is a little bit risky. So let's go ahead and go into the fight and see what it actually looks like. This will be a 2-stage fight. However, this particular, this point right here that you're at is the last point in which you will be able to change anything. So if you've taken off your Ghost Iron Dragonling because of the flickering eyes, put it back on now because this is when you're going to want it. And I would not go into this room unless you have all of your cooldowns that you could possibly want to use available. So our teammates have rejoined us, so we are going to re-beacon people, put one beacon on one person and one on the other. Simply because of survivability, I think I ended up putting my beacon on both of the non-tanks, but maybe not. I guess I just have it on Jared and Granny. It doesn't really matter that much at this phase. They are going to be taking damage, but neither of them are going to be taking significantly more than anyone else because as a healer in group content, you know what's about to happen. We're near the end of the dungeon. It's getting a little rough. No one's got any loot. Time for the DPS to start fighting each other. That's exactly what they're going to do, is they're going to start fighting one another, and you're going to try and keep this group together so that you can actually finish the damn dungeon. So, they are being turned against one another. They will begin fighting each other. You need to keep them alive while also healing some guys who come in from the sides. So right now what I've been doing here is I've just been building holy power by healing my beacon targets with holy light because we do want to conserve mana. This could actually, if you're flash of lighting, you could end up having some mana issues. So holy lights only when the only reason you're healing is to build holy power. They are now fighting each other, so I'm just gonna toss some light heals here or there. This isn't too stressful. Just a little bit here or there. But now once this guy gets to the center, what he's gonna do is he is going to okay, here we go. So he's bringing in ghosts from the side. So these green lines attached to ghosts. So here they come. You actually won't be able to really heal them until they enter the actual arena. They'll be out of your line of sight. This is a very stressful part of the fight for me. It's just trying to figure out when I can actually heal them. I think that if that were a little bit more clear to me, this would have been much easier. But the whole point is that you want to heal these 3 mobs before they reach the center. If they reach the center without being fully healed, they will join the fight in the next phase, and you will have to fight them. They will turn into guys from the first phase, so they'll be either the Arbalest with the Mana Sting, they'll be the Soldier with the Knife Dance and the Fixate, or they'll be the Mage with the Blitz. 1 or 2 isn't necessarily the worst. You deal with them the same as you've dealt with them in the first phase, but obviously the fewer mobs you have to fight, the better. So you want to try to keep these guys from getting to the center if you can avoid it. So they are very easy to heal, to be honest. What I would recommend, you can spam Light of the Martyr on them. Holy Shock and a Wog together will usually get them up completely. I have Flash. I don't normally use Flash of Light much, but I did use it here. And just Light of the Martyr is absolutely huge here, especially with wings. 2 GCDs and they're healed up. No worries at all. To me, for my experience, I think none of them got to the center on this particular pull. But I would occasionally have one get to the center, and it usually was because I just couldn't freaking target the right ghost. So a lot of this is just dealt with the fact that I'm so used to using unit frames, and we don't have them for this fight. So again, I've healed the 3, so here come the next 3. It's the same deal. I want to get them all healed up as quick as I can, keeping in mind that you can see from my unit frames that my buddies are still fighting one another. So I need to keep them alive, so that I don't worry too much about them, and I let the beacons keep them up. And then I just, between pulls, I use them to build holy power. Here come my new round of dudes to heal. These ones, I think I only need to heal 2, and then the phase ends. So, yep, there we go. So I've healed all of the dudes that I needed to. Now, even though there was a 3rd there, I don't have to keep healing it. The phase is over. This phase is called Rise Soldiers. This is when, if any had reached the center, or if any of the guys in the tower had died on my way up, they would turn into those mobs from the beginning and I would fight them. However, I did a good job this run and I won't have any join. So the Rise Soldiers stage is going to go immediately to the next stage. So which apparently is called a Thorn in the Side. So now we are into the last boss phase. So here's what to know about here. There's two main mechanics to worry about as the healer in this group. Jared Shadowsong is of course going to tank the boss, while our DPS players handle the DPS. And we have to keep everyone alive, including ourselves. The mechanics to worry about are that the boss will jump on you, leaving a big green circle underneath your feet. It will do damage with the jump, and the circle does a lot of damage as well when you stand in it. So you don't want to die to the circle, you don't want to stand in the circle, and you want to make sure to not waste the space in the room. So you want to get the first circle put towards the outside, and then you want to stand next to the circle for each jump, or possibly go into the previous circle for the next jump in order to not waste much of the room. The other mechanic is a debuff that he's going to put on you called Ignite Soul. What Ignite Soul does is when the debuff wears off, you will deal damage to your teammates based on the amount of health you have missing. So the more health you have when that debuff expires, the more damage you do to your teammates. So the challenge essentially in this phase is to manage your health and keep it low enough to not kill your teammates when that debuff runs out, but high enough to not die to the jump when he jumps on you, while simultaneously keeping your tank and your DPS alive. So let's see what that looks like. At the beginning of this, you are not going to have very many opportunities to actually melee this boss, or just so particularly if you're a melee healer like a paladin or a monk, you want to pop all of your crap right now and do as much damage as you can. I popped a potion, I popped wings, I popped drums, and we are going to just start going to town as quick as I can. He is going to jump. That is the jump. So you can see this big green circle is already beginning to fill the room. I took some damage. I've run out. Now normally my instinct is to heal myself up entirely, but you can see I have this debuff now. You can also tell based on this big circle over my head. That's my Ignite Soul. So I can't heal myself all the way up or I'll deal massive damage to my teammates. So instead I just have to subsist at low health. And in fact, my health was about 50%. That's actually pretty high for this debuff. So that's why I'm running into the circle on purpose. The circle is also not only an obstacle, but a tool for you to use. If your health is too high, you can run into the circle to lower your health in order to get low enough to not kill your group with the explosion. So what I like to do is try to make sure I have something that's going to be a big instant heal, be that a Wog or a Holy Shock or something, so that I can keep myself low, but I want to keep myself above 30%, and I can pop myself up with the Holy Shock or the Wog immediately after the jump, but I cannot heal myself above 50%, or I might accidentally kill people with the Ignite Soul. So I just got jumped on. I got pretty low, so I need to heal myself a little bit. This is another really good value for Flash of Light because it's a relatively weak heal. It's a way to heal yourself for a small amount rather than a larger amount from a Holy Shock or a Wog or something like that. Keep in mind you can also use Light of the Martyr if you're a Paladin, but you can absolutely kill yourself with it. So I recommend against it unless it's literally the only way you can lower your health in time. Instead, I recommend using the circle in order to lower your health. So again, every time he jumps, I just pop myself back up, and then I just focus all of my time on healing my buddies. While it's nice to throw some hammers and some judgments and such whenever you can, it is far more important to keep yourself alive and manage your health. The DPS players, or the DPS NPCs, do a significant amount of damage, not as much as I would like. I don't think I'd take them to my Mythic Plus, but they will handle the boss for you. You need to focus entirely on the health situation, such as it is. This was a really big habit for me to get. That is not the way a Mythic Plus Holy Paladin plays, of just run out and be a ranged healing. So it was, to me, the challenge of this was just breaking old habits. So Just be out here dealing with your health situation, making sure not to line of sight. These corners here do create line of sight problems. Consider, Devo aura mastery when the jump is or when an explosion is coming, divine purpose when a jump is coming. I recommend saving divine shield, your big bubble, because as you'll see here, often you will run out of space, and having an ability to just survive longer when there's no space in the room is very useful. You'll see what I just did was I threw a hammer right here, even though there really wasn't much here. It's because I knew he was about to jump on me, so I would get some heals out of the hammer, and also he's just going to stand in it. So that's a little bit of extra damage I got out of that hammer by throwing it where I knew he was going to jump to instead of where he was. So we're continuing to keep our health above 20 but below 50. Trying to keep everyone as alive as I can. We're about to hit our limit on the outside circle, so we're going to have to go inside. Always stay near, as close as you can, safely stand to the edge. Not only is it going to allow you to keep more of the room clean, but also it lets you duck in very quickly if you need to lower your health in case anything should go wrong and you accidentally drink a health potion or something out of habit. So I've got wings available here in just a moment because it's getting a little dicey here. There's the wings. Try to get Jared up because he can get chunked. You can see I've got Saved by the Lights procced on him. That's why I really love it. He can get chunked pretty roughly, so you do want to make sure to keep him in particular very topped off. I'm about to run out of space. I've got one jump left, so right now I'm really banking on the fact that I have Divine Shield available. So a little duck in, keep my health low, Divine Shield up. And now I'm just trying to buy time and keep everyone alive to get these last few percent out. If you are the one who dies if he's relatively low and you die, don't necessarily release. If he's really low, the NPCs can finish him off. So wait until it's actually a wipe. That said, thankfully I don't die, but it was getting real close, but we made it happen. So that was my Mage Tower run from a Holy Paladin point of view. I hope that that description is useful to y'all. Have a great day.